Hi there, in this video clip today I want to look at recycling and reuse of materials. The materials which we use at home, in industry, these are the majority types of materials that we use. Glass, metals, building materials, plastics or polymers, and a class of material which is called a clay ceramic. I'll have a word about those in a moment. Clay ceramics. Let's look at glass, bottles, containers, windows, anything where you need a transparent medium to look through. Conservatories, metals such as aluminium, iron, and don't forget this, steel is made out of iron. Steel is an alloy basically of iron and carbon. Building materials, timber, RSJs, reinforcement, steel reinforcement for concrete. The list is endless. Copper for copper tubing, central heating systems, wires, cables. Plastics, you cannot find, let me start again. There's a hell of a lot of things made out of plastics, from plastic bags to cladding, and plastics are used in polyesters for clothing, etc. And clay ceramics is things like porcelain, pottery, and bricks. Now, how do we reduce the materials, the amount of the materials getting used up? Of course, lots of these come from the ground, like iron, aluminium, but the resources, the amount of iron ore, hematite, the amount of bauxite, aluminium oxide, it's not endless. And the amount of fuel that we use, to make things like oil, North Sea gas, coal, etc. There's a limited supply of those. So how do we reduce the amount of energy, etc.? Well, we can reuse a product, we can recycle something, we can reduce the need for a product, and we reduce the waste involved, and we reduce the methods of producing them, extracting them from the ground. Like you get quarries where they dig out things out the ground and they leave huge big holes in the ground. Mining, if you ever go to somewhere like St. Austell, you go there, you look around and you see mountains of waste china clay. I mean, mountains of it. And if you ever go to a coal mine or a slate mine, they're full of slag heaps and waste slate, waste products, and they spoil the environment. Plus, when you're doing mining and quarrying, there's all sorts of things going into the atmosphere, particulate matter, bad for your health, breathing problems, etc. So let's look at an example where we reuse something, right? Reuse something like glass bottles, for example. Glass bottles. They could be just collected and washed and cleaned and reused for the same use. Whereas if these bottles were broken or the glass is smashed up, it's then got to be recycled, and that involves a process in which the glass is smashed up, heated to high temperature, and then it's poured into molds or it's made into something else of a different use, i.e. you get brown bottles, green bottles, transparent, so the glass is not going to be used for its original use, it could be used for something else, and that is a key feature of reusing something. It's used in a different application. Now, let's look at recycling. Recycling is where you've got a product, a material that is recycled, and it may be used for its original use, or it may be used for an alternative, a different use. You start thinking about your household waste. We've got green bins, and in that we put glass, aluminium, paper, card, some types of plastic, etc. When it leaves your home, when the guys come around and they pick up your green bin, they take it to a recycling centre. This is the recycling, and it's separated into metals and plastics and different types of thing. And how did it do that? They either use magnets to separate the iron or steel based products, and they put on conveyor belts, and that could be based on its weight. And now they've got fancy laser technology that sorts out whether it's a metal, etc., etc. And let's just look at some of those things. I mentioned about the glass can be used again or crushed and melted and used for different things, and plastic bottles, they can be recycled into things like carpets. You know, you look at your carpet, turn it over, look at the label, it says things like polyester or polypropylene fibers, and that is a use of recycled plastic bottles. Now, metals now, recycling them. Well, typical metals which can be recycled are copper, aluminium and iron. I'm going to put Fe, so see that, by the way. Steel is an alloy of iron and carbon. It's quite a difficult process. Magnets you can use, chemical means, etc. Iron, let's look a little bit at that. What do they do with iron to recycle it? Well, if you remember in the previous video clip, they stick it into a blast furnace. The iron ore is heated with carbon to very high temperatures. The molten iron is run off at the bottom, and then with a bit of carbon it turns it into steel. So you can take scrap iron, scrap steel, whack it into the blast furnace, and it can be used again, but maybe for a different product. It can be recast, reformed, etc. Well, that's basically what I wanted to say about recycling. It's becoming a major thing. where we used to live in Caversham, close to Reading. They've got a up-to-date centre. You go there and instead of having just 2 things to stick in your waste, you have about 20 things, and if you go back, you have wood, ceramics, bricks, glass, iron, white goods, washing machines, oil, paint, and it's getting more sophisticated because the raw materials we have will not last forever. So the recycling, I forget what the figures are, but they're talking about 60% of the materials collected from your home or from whatever it is, they're recycled. So if it can't be recycled, the next option is the rubbish, the trash is burnt, and the energy from burning is used to power turbines, generators, etc., which is then the energy from that is then pumped into the national grid, which is then, if you like, supplying electricity to industry and homes. And green waste is taken to huge composters, and it's slightly damped, and eventually after about a month it turns into compost, and now these recycling centres are bagging it up as fertilisers, compost, and then it's sold to garden centres or even to you. Well, that's about it on this, but the thing is, it's cutting down the use of materials, because these materials cannot go on forever, so it's future saving, reduction in energy, and that's all I want to say. Speak to you soon now. Bye.